Indishnikos, Algonquin of Barrier Lake, and Dojaba. Hi, my name is Monique Minach, and welcome to our lecture series. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Cree keyboard and Cree syllabics and the whole history of printing and in the Cree community. And our panelists this evening are Greg Spence, Gloria Bell, and Megan Byrne. And I'm just going to, I'll give you a brief, first I'm going to do welcome, and then I'll give you their a little bit of background on each of them. So I wanted to open this space with a few words to the Creator. Kachimigwich Jemnido, thank you for the water, for the plants, for the trees, for the ones who fly, for the ones who crawl, for the ones who swim, for the furred, for the feathered, for the four-legged, and for the two-legged. And thank you for bringing these people together with open hearts and with open minds. Help them to see beauty, help them to hear truth, help them to learn about our Indigenous communities and to take that knowledge and use it well in their lives. Kachimigwich, 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 Kachimigwich. Thank you very much and welcome. Tonight we're going to hear from Greg Spence. Greg was the only child of 8, and he was the only one who was born in a hospital setting. He assisted in the development of Cree language instruction for Laurentian University and taught the course for many years. While he was employed with Mushkegowuk Tribal Council in the 90s, he was responsible, along with his colleagues, in developing the 6th seasonal curriculum model for the region and establishing the annual Great Moon Gathering, an educational conference for teachers and professionals in the region of Hudson and James Bay. For the last 17 years, Greg has been a regional coordinator for the Cree Fest Festival, a summer cultural festival that celebrates the life of the Mushkegowuk Cree. And Greg has recently retired, but is still very, very busy and is an arts consultant for James Bay and pursues his interest in language development and as a translator of documents and educator of the Omashkego culture. Gloria Bell is an art historian, creative writer, and photographer. Bell pursues relationships between visual culture, media, and family histories. Her research interests include historical and contemporary First Nations, Métis, and Inuit arts, exhibitions, histories, sashes, beadwork, global histories of body arts, and histories of photography. Bell is currently working on a big book filled with a lot of neat pictures called Eternal Sovereigns, Indigenous Artists, Activists, and Travelers, Reframing Rome. It's set to be published by the University of Washington Press. Bell is involved in mediating archival images and imagining alternative histories. Her art criticism and essays are in publications, including First American Art Magazine, Canadian Art, Wakazos Review, Journal of Global Catholicism, and the Métis in Canada Anthology. Bell is also the Terra Foundation Rome Prize Fellow and hopes to engage in questions surrounding the global reach of Indigenous media the next time they are in Rome. Megan Byrne is a Métis of Ontario. She's a digital media artist and gamer designer born and raised in Hamilton. She has been creating digital interactive work since 2014, and her designs incorporate narrative, game mechanics, sound, traditional art, and are deeply rooted in Indigenous futurisms. Indigenous futurisms, language, and Indigenous feminist theory. She sees her work as a constant struggle to navigate, sorry, I'm trying to navigate my webpage, navigate the complexities of Indigenous identity within a deeply colonized system. Megan uses her games to explore questions of cultural belonging, the indigenization of media, and the future of Indigenous language and culture. So I'd like to welcome all 3 of our panelists today. I really appreciate you coming out tonight to speak to us. And I believe we are going to be starting, we're going to have a presentation from the 3 artists, and then we'll have a question period after that. And I believe we're starting with Greg Spence. So Greg, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you, Miigwech.
All right. Miigwech, Monique, thank you very much. And I just want to say that I'm really grateful and really appreciate what's happening and will be happening in terms of where the direction of our culture is going, where the direction of our language is going. And Gloria and Megan, I really appreciate. I don't know you. I've never heard of you, but since tonight, I'm sure that I will gain a bit more insight in what you are doing, Gloria and Megan, and what our future children will be doing in terms of sustaining our cultures, sustaining our languages through media, through the new technologies that they will be maintaining. And I feel really great about that. I feel really happy about that because like according to my bio, I'm retired now from the 9 to 5 world, but yet I keep going. I wanna keep going. But before that, there's been years where I felt that I don't want to do this no more. I'm tired. Nobody's supporting me. The community people's not supporting me. I'm the only one doing it, except a few of us, a handful of people that are doing it up north. So I'm really thankful for this new it's like a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of what I've been experiencing and what a lot of us have been experiencing working with languages. It's a difficult job. It's not easy. We struggle, in so many ways. So I'm really thankful for that. Anyway, I want to start from. I think it was but it was 1974. I graduated from the Lisgar High School in Ottawa. I did my grade 12 there, and I did my grade 13, but I failed my biology, and I didn't get my grade 13. But as long as I got my grade 12, that's okay with me. And then I never went to university. I had a chance to go to university, but at that time, the trend was like the economy at that time wasn't that great. Every student that came out of high school didn't want to go to the university because there was no future to it. We wanted to get some experience, working experience, and, get out there, start working, and whatever. And then I went home to James Bay, to Fort Albany. I'm originally from Fort Albany, and I was born there, but yet I always think about those years as a young child, where I grew up on the land with my father and my mother, and another family unit with us. Growing up there as a child, right up to at the age of 5 or 6, and being able to see what was happening, what I was being taught on the land with my father and my mother in that two family units out there, listening to the stories, listening to the legends, and be able to experience that part of a childhood experience. And that's really important to me. And I think that we should, offer that to our own children, offer that to our own grandchildren, and so on, that they know where we come from. That's where identity. That's what identity is all about. The land. The land is that's who we are. And at the same time, the stories, the legends, and the family unit, the whole thing, is what's really important to us. And then I wasn't able to read my language, read Slavic, until I was out of high school. because in the residential school era, that was a big part of it. I don't want to go there, but I had the opportunity to get back to it after high school. I went back to Fort Albany. I worked at the residential school for 2 years, and then it closed down. So I didn't transfer to any other residential school out west or out in the Western Province. I decided to stay home. But I had the opportunity to have a training position in Timmins within the Treaty 9 or the Ojibwe Culture Center, which I did. And I applied for it, I got it. And then the only people that I was under, my mentors, was my sister. My sister just happened to be there working for the Culture Center, and what I referred to as my aunt, Annabella Goulet. She's part of our family, and I always thought she was my aunt, and she still is. She's part of my family, and they spoke Cree fluently. They wrote and the syllabics, used the syllabics fluently, and they even used the old Remington typewriters. I remember that. I remember Annabelle using the old Remington typewriter, working with the church. She wrote out all the psalms and all the literature for the priests and so on and so forth. And she did all that. That's Annabelle's work right there. And then my sister just became part of us, became part of the team, working for our language. And then when we began, and I was trained as a translator. I became a translator, and it took me about 6 weeks to a month to learn the syllabic system. I learned how to read syllabics within 6 months, but yet it took me a whole year to be able to work with the syllabic system, to be a translator. That's how long it took me. A year after that, I became the coordinator of the language program. And the two, my sister and my aunt, Annabella, were the two individuals that assist me to become who I am right now. I'm an interpreter, I'm a translator, and I work with syllabics, and we develop the font for the computer, working with other people, and that's where we started. From the Remington 1940s Remington computer right down to the Olivetti Company typewriter. And the syllabics is already there. But what we did, about 10 years after, maybe 15 years after that, we started working with a programmer from Japan. She was living in Ottawa, and then we worked with her in developing what we have right now, the Slavic font, which we call the Amelia N font. And we worked with her, and we developed the N dialect font, and also the L dialect font. And that's still what I still use to this day. There is some glitches to it at this point. Like, for instance, the letter, the sound for the L sound became a little T for the Slavic font. I have no idea where that came from. And I think there were some very strong-minded people at that point. I couldn't get rid of it. We couldn't get rid of it because a lot of the people that were working with their own Slavic writing, they were more devoted to the influence of the Roman Catholic Church, and I think they introduced that L that little T Slavic character for the L sound, and we couldn't get rid of it. We couldn't get rid of it. And I think there's a couple more characters in there that we couldn't change. At some point in the 1970s, we wanted to standardize the Slavic system. I wasn't really, approval to it, because I knew that there were two Slavic systems. One was the what is called the Eastern system, and then the Western system. The Western system is the Roman Catholic version of it. The Church, the Catholic Church, introduced these characters more like slashes to the left. And maybe Gloria probably knows about that. There's a whole other, maybe 11 different characters that was introduced to the system, and the Roman Catholic community were trained or taught how to use that. And then there's the Eastern system, which is the Anglican version. The Anglicans' influence on the whole development of Slavics. So throughout those years in the 70s and 80s, we were in conflict with each other whether we wanted to standardize it, because we wanted to develop curriculum and creed. So the struggle was, what do we use? What do we use? Do we want to use the Eastern? Do we want to use the Western? Or do we want to use the what we call finals, which is the consonants of a sound, like the S, T, K, ch sounds. So we couldn't do it. So we decided just to keep it like that. We kept the Eastern and we kept the Western. So we never actually standardized it. But personally, I wanted to get rid of the Roman Catholic version and keep the Anglican version, because we would eliminate all those characters and make the typewriter easier. There would be too many characters if we kept both. If we kept both the Anglican version and the Roman Catholic version, the East and West version. But we left it like that. We never went any further than that. The other thing that if we wanted to develop or create curriculum, it would be twice the cost. We would have to make curriculum, the books, literature in the Eastern version and also the Western version. And I'm going to go back to the 1840s, and I think Gloria probably has that history. John Evans, I think he was a Methodist, and he was a linguist at the same time. He was a linguist. He listened to the people, the language, the sounds of the language, and he developed the Slavic system. That's according to history. He developed that history, and he was keen on shorthand, and that's how he did it. That's how he developed the Slavic system with the speakers, the language speakers at that point. And according to history, that's what he did. Gloria probably has that information. And according to my elders and the people I spoke to, John Evans may not have totally created that system, because in our culture, in our people, when they used to roam the land, they used to make these signs, like if they were coming up on a fireplace, they would have made some signs on the fireplace, or maybe a stick, and the stick maybe pointing to the west or some kind of direction, and that's where the Chechichocha characters came from. And the person that left that fireplace would say, "Okay, I'm going this way," and he would point that stick towards that particular direction or the other direction, and maybe make notches on those sticks. I said, okay, I've been here for 3 days. We were here for 3 days. Now we've gone. So they were able to read that. The people were, and that's how it became love. So that's the debate. That was the debate back then, whether John Evans actually was the sole person to develop the syllabic system. He may have had the understanding of those primitive, not primitive, but those signs on the fireplace or sticks or anywhere else, and he adapted it to his knowledge of shorthand or whatever, as a linguist, and that's how he was able to do it. That's the history. So, and then we've come that far, and when we developed the syllabic font, working with this Japanese programmer, what we did is that we took a whole page of syllabic text, and the same idea how the English keyboard came about. You would do a sequence count, like how many times did the K or C, come up in that page, and we did that. We counted all the sounds, and they came up with a calculation and how many times the T sound, or just Che sound, or K, Kikoka, or all these characters, and then we counted all of them together. And then once we did that, we placed the characters according to your normal, when you type, we placed them according to your index, second, and third finger. The ones that are more common becomes your index, second, and third finger on both left and right. And the lesser ones would be your third or your fourth finger, and so on and so forth. And that's what we did. We did that. And that's why we have the Emilia and the Alphonse to this day. And it works really well. It works really well. Except we need to do a bit more work on it. Maybe delete some characters and do some work to make it work better at this point. And here we are in 2020. There's so few of us that are working with that Slavic font, and there's some really good fonts out there that I know that some translators are working with. Maybe the Wawate communications people, maybe used other programmers to come up, and I've seen some really nice fonts out there, much better than the ones we use. They're really nice. It comes out really well. If you're making a poster or something, and the design, it looks really nice. The ones we use, it doesn't look that great. What I mean is, like, if we were to use our Western version, and you put it on a piece of poster or some media, it doesn't look that great. It's not very appealing. I would rather use the Eastern version because it looks good on paper. It looks good on when you're typing with it. And I would rather go, with the modern versions, and work with people with our community, and do away with a lot of the traditional or the older versions of it. I know traditionalists, they tend to, they don't want to change. They don't want to change. And I think we should. I think we should change. We should change with the times.
Thanks, Greg. I think it's wonderful how you've been able to give us a bit of the history and your participation in the development of the Cree syllabics and with the keyboard. Gloria, you were talking about a little more of an overview of the history. What can you tell us about that?
Do you want me to start my screen share?
Sure, sure.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Greg. That was really interesting to hear your personal experience working with the typewriter, and yeah, there's a little bit of overlap, but not too much. And I want to thank Megan as well, and I want to thank Anis and Monique for this opportunity to be here and to share my work. Okay, so. All right, here we go. Okay, so I hope everyone can see my screen. Yeah, so I just wanted to share a little bit about my own research and like how I've come to this topic, and share a little bit about my amazing experiences that I've had working in Indigenous art. So the tentative title of my talk today is The Global Reach of Indigenous Media, Cree Font Typewriters and Travels. So in 2011, I had the real privilege of traveling to Venice with other members of the Aboriginal curatorial delegation, including Michelle Lavallee, Leanne Lirondell, and then Australian curator Catherine de Zegger. And we attended the Venice Biennale, which is one of the oldest contemporary art fairs. And at that point, I started really thinking about the history of Indigenous artists, activists, and travelers in Italy, and specifically in Venice, but also in Rome. And just thinking about how indigeneity, how First Nations, Métis, and Inuit artists, activists, and travelers traveled through Italy, but also like communicated across like global audiences. And then on the right here, we see Buffalo Bill on the Grand Canal in Venice with Indigenous men, including Chief Rocky Bear and Chief Blackheart, quote, the only Indians ever in Venice, from 1890. So I've been thinking about contemporary Indigenous curation at the Venice Biennale, but also like the longer history of Indigenous artists, missionaries, and activists traveling through Italy for various reasons. And this research, so more recently, I've been working on this broader project, which is an examination of the 1925 Pontifical Missionary Exhibition. And there was First Nation, Métis, and Inuit artworks that were sent in for this exhibition. And it was a global exhibition, and pilgrims from around the world came. And so I've been thinking about that year. So the 1920s was also a very devastating period for Indigenous communities. And I think there's no sort of coincidence that this exhibition was sort of positioning Indigenous art as trophies of the hope at this period. I think my cat is running around in the background, so you're gonna hear some rattling, but just bear with me. Okay, so I'm interested in incorporating my archival experiences in Rome with my photography and writing, and sort of unsettling colonial conceptions of Indigenous peoples, and also just thinking of the longer history of Indigenous scholars and activists and artists in Rome. Okay, here's another one. Oh yeah, so this is the, I'm promoting my book project, Eternal Sovereigns, Indigenous Artists, Activists, and Travelers Reframing Rome. So thinking about the longer history of Indigenous activism in Rome. And I was thinking about this tonight as I was preparing for this talk, and thinking about how I'm always coming up against missionaries. So in this project, I've been working a lot through missionary records, missionary accounts and pamphlets, and also for thinking about the Cree typewriter and the Cree printing press. There's a lot of missionary records and pamphlets that I've been working through, and I'll talk a bit more about that shortly. Here's just an example of some Cree moccasins that were sent in for this Pontifical Missionary Exhibition and are still held at the Vatican Missionary Ethnological Museum. So I've been thinking about, as an art historian, like, how do you write about Indigenous artworks that are at the Vatican, and sort of the politics of access and also representation. Here's a picture, my picture from the Vatican Apostolic Library entrance and the Vatican Secret Archive entrance. Just thinking about how do I write my own experiences in as like a Métis scholar, working through these very colonial institutions, and thinking about, again, about the history of Indigenous artists, activists, and scholars in Rome, and also contemporary activism. Here's just an example of the archival situation in Rome. So this is the Society of the Divine Word Archive. And this is actually where one of the curators for the exhibition from the 1920s, a lot of his personal correspondence is there. And so I've been working through a lot of different documents in Italian, French, in German, and English. Okay. And then here's just one more shot of the view of St. Peter's from Janiculum Hill and Collegio di Propaganda Fide. And this is actually where Pablo Tac, was the first Luceno missionary, was writing his Luceno dictionary. Okay. All right. So I also just wanted to share that this is Albion Cree Printing Press from 1851. And this is actually at the McGill Rare Books Library. And so my graduate class and I, we attended this workshop at the Rare Books and Special Collections Library, and we were thinking about Indigenous presence in the archive. So we did a tour of the documents and artifacts in the collection, and in one dark corner stood a single pull Albion printing press. So the Church Missionary Society sent the press to Moose Factory, James Bay in 1850 to Anglican Bishop James Horden. It was designed by R.W. Cope in 1820, and it's about 5 feet tall and made of black cast iron. The press was designed to be operated by a single person. It still has the chase, the place where the font is situated, and it is currently set with Cree syllabics for the last of Horden's publications, a Cree almanac, which seems to be a calendar with important dates for Cree feast days and hunting days. And I'm actually really excited and grateful to hear Greg's experience working with these Cree machines. And I'll also just, I want to hear more in our conversation after. So in the literature, Bishop Horden and his team of white missionaries get all the credit for the press. But what is also interesting and perhaps key is how Cree communities were using the press to produce Cree hymnals. Misperceptions about Indigenous literacy rates abound. In the 1850s, many Cree language books were printed by the press, and this shows that there must have been a substantial community of Cree readers and speakers in the James Bay area. Looking at the press today, I think about all the Cree language materials that were printed, including Cree language dictionaries, hymnals, and other paperworks during the mid-19th century. I also think about the labor of Bishop Horden's Cree associates, whose names were not recorded in the archival record. Their labor was essential to the production of Indigenous reading materials for communities across Turtle Island. The Cree syllabic font keys still bear traces of the black ink, and here's an example here, used to print reading materials, and thus a trace of Indigenous labor and the agency of Indigenous people in the production of media. Like the press, the production of the Cree syllabic font system is a matter of some controversy, as white missionaries receive the credit for developing the system in a paternalistic line of interpretation, which continues to this day, especially in the some of the research that I've come across. This, however, does not consider the origin stories of Cree elders such as Wood Cree Badger Call and the labor of Horden's Cree associates, as Greg was sharing earlier. Okay, so what is the relation between technology of printing and Indigenous literacies? On the one hand, many missionaries strived to learn Indigenous languages and made Indigenous language dictionaries from the early contact period into the 20th century. On the other hand, missionaries were key colonial agents in the destruction of Indigenous languages by forbidding children to speak their languages at missionary-run residential schools. Soto artist Robert Hoole represents this violence in recent oil stick works. I'm also thinking about how the Cree Press is a reminder of missionary colonial activity and an example of Indigenous technologies. Okay, so I see I'm just gonna also share, here is a picture of the Cree typewriter available in Indian News from October 1973. And I'll just read a portion of the newspaper clipping here. So it says, although there are some typewriters in existence with Cree syllabic keyboards, this was the first comprehensive attempt on a national scale to create a Cree syllabic typewriter acceptable and usable throughout the country. Okay, so I've also, so here's a picture of the Olivetti Company from the 1960s, again, just showing the global reach of their production of typewriters, and they produce typewriters in multiple languages across the world. Oh yeah, I also just wanted to bring this in, thinking about Indigenous technologies. I've been thinking about moss as an Indigenous technology as well, and also thinking about healing and the ways that Indigenous communities across Turtle Island have used moss for its healing and antiseptic properties, and the collection and harvesting and drying of moss in preparation for use, as well as and the importance of knowledge preservation. And this has been really inspired by talking with my mom on our walk in the woods, thinking about moss, thinking about healing of wounds, and the importance of stories and family tradition. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. Here's a really interesting work I can talk about later, but this is a Dene artist, Catherine Blackburn, thinking about the importance of the mother tongue, but also glossalia, like this, speaking of multiple languages, and specifically within the Christian tradition, but just the importance of speaking Indigenous languages. America Meredith, Cherokee artist, working on Cherokee language revitalization. And then, oh yeah, this is the current archival interventions I've been working with, thinking about textual overlays of my own archival experiences, and working with original archival photographs and other documents, missionary documents, and sort of like unsettling those documents. Here's another one I've been working on. And okay, yeah, and I just wanted to dedicate this talk to my mom, who inspires my work, and yeah, just like thinking about walking through the woods and thinking about conversation as an important method of doing art history and creating art. And oh yeah, thanks for listening. You can sign up for my newsletter by writing me or on my faculty page, and I will stop here. And I believe Megan is going to share her work next. So thank you everyone.
Thanks, Gloria. That was fabulous, and I loved how it took in what Greg was saying, and it also built upon it and told us more. I'm curious about the printing press and what dialect that when you said you found there was something on it when you saw the printing press, what dialect were they using?
I let me just check my notes here.
Sorry.
It is, I'm actually not sure. I'm actually not sure. I think it might be the Western one. Actually, no, sorry. Greg was saying that the Anglicans were working with the Eastern dialect. So it actually might be the Eastern dialect because it was the Anglican Bishop Horton.
Horton Hall is the residential school that was in Moose Factory. They named it after him, but I'm conscious of the time. So this is something we can talk about after, and I'm really curious to hear what Megan has to say. So I'm gonna hand it over to Megan, but thank you.
I'm gonna do my intro first, but then I have to share something that I was not intending to share because, okay. Tansi Megan Bernisika-san, Apatawakosi-san, Hamilton, Ontario, Nugent. Hi, my name is Megan Byrne, and I am Apatawakosi-san, or Métis Cree from the Métis Nation of Ontario, and I am a game designer. And also, okay, so this is crazy. The reason I got into Cree syllabic is because in my family, we've had a story for a really long time that Archdeacon Thomas Vincent was the man who did all the translation and actually made the what's known as like the Cree Bible and the Cree hymnals from Ontario, but we never found any proof. And now I know why, because he was the apprentice to John Horden. There's actually, like, he was the one who was doing all the labor. And so this is like crazy because it's always just been an oral exchange story. And even though my family has gone through a lot of trying to separate themselves from being Indigenous, hiding behind being like white passing so that they're not prosecuted. That was always like the one thing my grandma was very proud of. But again, it was like whenever somebody would talk about it, Vincent's name would never come up. So I assumed like, oh, maybe we just misremembered, or, you know, stories get lost and twisted. But now that like Gloria's done that, I was like, no, that's so crazy. So like the reason why I got into doing Cree syllabic is because of that story, because you know, my grandma was always talking about how important it was that we you know, kept using our language, even though she didn't have it anymore, even though, you know, I didn't grow up learning how to speak it. But it was always really important, and I was always really drawn to like the beauty of the syllabics, even though they were like, well, it was created by missionaries. I'm like, but I don't really believe that. Like, you know, the way Greg explains it, it's like it really does feel like this was something that kind of came from the community as like, I guess, a compromise between the two to have what they said written down, but not in English. And so I actually started working on this open source Cree typeface project because I started working on a video game, and I really wanted to have Cree signs like in syllabic everywhere, but it was really hard to find fonts that weren't sort of professional document looking. And when I did find a really beautiful font, it was not available, or I had to go through a lot of hoops to get it. And I was just thinking, like, this isn't really fair, because if you're almost any other language, you get a million fun fonts to play around with. And, you know, here we are with just like the basics of like what is necessary. And I think one of the great things is we're starting to hit a point with our language that we don't need to just be what's necessary. It's like we can be frivolous, we can have fun, crazy, weird things. And so that's what I wanted to do with this project. So this is a very new project. I'm still in the process of getting things handled. So the idea was to create original syllabics fonts, open source fonts for my upcoming game, which is called Hill Agency. It's a cyber noir Indigenous futurism detective game, hopefully to have some of it out next year. And then also start a collection that's publicly available of engaging and fun Cree syllabic fonts for everyone to use. So one of the things that I had to keep in mind when I was putting this together, and that was reminded of, is like not everyone understands or can read syllabic. So it was important to have Latin character support so that people could have the Cree words in syllabic and then have the Cree words in Latin, but with the same font, so it still felt like it belonged together. So these are the fonts of my game. So I wanted to play around with neon, get some cyberpunk. I wanted to play around with, so the whole thing is set in this sort of like cyberpunk meets 1920s to 1940s, depending on where you are. And there was something about this font from the old DOS machines that I grew up with that I really loved and felt like really fit well with the 40s for some reason, probably because of Blade Runner, not gonna lie. But yeah, play around with that one. I also, like, we were gonna have this university town, and I was like, I want a varsity font. And I was just like, how fun would it be to have syllabics in varsity font, and how fun would it be to like have kids who can go to a university and have that university, like, you know, have their letter jacket, but it's a Cree syllabic letter instead of an English letter. And then Art Deco, because again, it was sort of like cyber noir meets 1920s to 1940s. So we're kind of calling it neo Art Deco. It's got that slickness of Art Deco, but it's still kind of got like a future vibe. Also, a nice thing about Art Deco fonts is they can sometimes be used for like alien fonts. So for sci-fi films, they look really funny and like, so they look really slick. And I love Indigenous sci-fi. So it's like, oh, this would be so awesome if somebody could just like, have a bunch of like touch screens on their Indigenous Star Trek and just like pull up this font and not have to go through all the process and expense of having this put together for them. And so here's just a quick little GIF clip from the game that I'm currently working on, pre-art, obviously. But if you kind of look in the background behind the rain, you can kind of see these like flashing neons, and those are all in syllabic. And those are all in 3D models of fonts that I drew. And then I just rendered out into 3D. And then I put I put something on it to like make it glow and flash. And then it was the same thing in the picture behind it. That was just our mock-up of sort of what would the space look like and how are we going to use Cree font in the space. So the general fonts, and this is just sort of like, again, these are like pie in the sky. I probably am not going to be able to get to do all of this right away. I'll be actually really impressed if I can do 2 of the first ones. But these were like more like, where can I keep going? And these are also ones that I would still use in the game, but that I was sort of thinking, what are things that people besides me would want these fonts for? So I was thinking like corner stores and like what kind of fonts do those look like, the hand painted style. Every time I'm thinking about a different font style, I'm thinking about the person who's using it and how can I make their life easier and what is it that they actually really want. So thinking about things for like kids, like and teachers, so like the scribbly notebook style where it looks like you took too much time doing some doodles and notes. And I just really liked that sort of freeness to it. And I kind of wanted something that didn't always feel so slick, so professional, almost like very formal. I wanted something that maybe kids would be a little bit more comfortable using in their notebooks, and also in a way to kind of encourage youth to draw syllabic, because sometimes it can be a bit intimidating to see this like very clean lines and think, well, like mine's going to look terrible compared to that. So, if you take that aesthetic purposefully and apply it, you kind of like, I guess, take down the difficulty level a little. And then like, what else would kids use it for? Like school posters, vote for me, fun events, that kind of thing. So I was thinking about sort of that old 3D, 2D hand-drawn style. And then horror, because I love horror, and because of like films like Blood Quantum that just came out. And the thing about horror font is like, it is a very particular aesthetic. And one of the things that I have noticed is if there's no money for fonts in the poster, usually they'll just default to English or Latin. And I just don't want money to be a barrier for people to have fun. And I don't want money to be a barrier for people to express their language and Cree syllabic the way they kind of want to. And so that's why I want to do this project. So the idea is that once everything gets done, and then you can use it however you'd like, school projects, packaging, posters, signage, that you would essentially just be able to pick it up and use it without worrying about cost, without worrying about having to pay a designer, and then do you need to make that into an actual font? Do you need to use it later, or is it going to just kind of be like a one and done just for the sign or just for the title? So we're using a two-pronged design plan. So either we're going to find current open source Latin fonts and create Swampy syllabic, or I guess that would be Eastern Cree support font. And the thing is, with making fonts without having somebody who actually knows how to make fonts, is that it's really expensive. So I am working with Canada Types. They are offering like, if we partner on this project and we get the funding for it, they are offering a steep discount. However, that's still $5,000 per font. And when I say per font, I mean, so you have English, and that's a font, and it's, you have regular Arial. So that's one font, and you have it in English. But then if you want like Latin extended, so like the French accents, that's another font, that's another $5,000. And if you want extended 2, which is sort of like I think your German ones, that's another $5,000. And then if you want a different weight for each one, so you want like italic, you want bold, you want black, that's $5,000 each for each for each weight. So it gets really expensive. So the best thing to do is, cheapest thing to get something that's really crazy looking is to go with an open source Latin font that's already available and then just create a syllabic support for it. Or, and this is how I got started, I'll design the syllabic. So you can see the example on the one side, that's actually a font I designed. However, it's not, well, there's like design things that I don't know about making fonts that Canada Type was like, this needs to be fixed, this will have to be adjusted. So it's not because I don't have a background in making font, I just have a background in graphic design. There's a lot that I don't know and there's a lot I need help with. And so then the idea would be, I would design, they would adjust, and then we would create a Latin support for that one. So all in all, it does get really expensive, but I'm willing to kind of find the money, find the partners, take on that expense, so at least I can get some of this out into public hands. And then once we've kind of finished that phase, then the plan is to continue and do an extended Cree syllabic support for the Finnish fonts, because there are symbols that we may not be able to get to in the first one. So the idea is take as many of the symbols that are used across like all the Cree, and then make sure that we have at least one complete set and then do the other set once we can. And then if we can, do extended Latin support for Finnish fonts so that people who don't just speak or who want to like also put it in English can also keep using the same font. And then we're hoping to showcase it. This is because if we end up going the Canada Council route, that is definitely what they'll want. But also, like, this is artwork, and I think it should be treated like artwork. It's like a lot of labor. It's beautiful. I still think that even the fonts we have now, as professional and uptight as they are, they're still gorgeous, and I still think they should be treated like the art pieces that they can be. And then sort of like juxtapose, it'd be right nice to have that little juxtaposition of font as art and then font as tool. And so after the exhibition, all the fonts that we build will be open with a SIL open font license, which essentially means that you don't need our permission, you don't have to pay us anything. You literally can take it and use it as you want. There's no limitation. You can even like adjust it and make your own font based off of that font. And then again, like, this is about making life easier for Cree speakers. I'm not trying to make any money off of this, and I don't want people to be limited. So if they see something I've made and they want to make their own version, they want to base it off of mine, or maybe they see something in mine and they want to just like adjust, I want to give people that option. And then the hope is, if it goes really well and everyone really likes it, we can start doing calls and then have youth or other people kind of come up with their own font ideas and designs, and then we could work with them and actually develop that into an open source font. So that's everything for me. I think I talked really fast, so I'm sorry.
No, that's fantastic. It really takes it to the next level, how not just the syllabics and the use of the syllabics with the keyboard and the computer, but also how we can take that and move it forward, which I think is amazing, absolutely amazing. So I'm wondering if you have any questions for each other. I don't know if I saw any in the chat, but is there anything that you wanted to, we have a few minutes for questions. What do you think?
I need a minute.
Yeah. How about you, Greg?
I don't know if it's a question, but listening to Gloria, listening to Megan, there's a lot of questions there. Not only for me, but everybody else. Like, in terms of developing, syllabics as a visual form, as an artistic language presentation, and I like that. I really like that. And I mean, my experience with syllabics, there needs to be a lot of development. There needs to be more work on it. how do you present the language using the font, and I think our font, the Emilia font that we use right now, there needs to be more development, and I think I'm thinking about these Arabic languages, all those, the Chinese. The Chinese, it looks like little houses, and something's going on in these little houses, which is fascinating to me. I mean, they've gone a long way. They developed, they're thinking, and all you have to do is listening to Megan. It's really fascinating how Megan describes that. It's like you see what's happening visually. And I think Slavics can be done that way too. If I understand what Megan is talking about and what Gloria is talking about, I think we need to develop as Aboriginal people with our writing systems. They might become, they're probably at some point they're crude and primitive, but we still need work to do. We still need work to do that, to be able to present visually what we're talking about, what our perspectives are, or what we see. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm really inspired by Gloria and Megan with their research and the work that they've been doing. It's really inspiring to me anyway. Yeah. Great work.
I have just sort of not a technical question, but how do you know which dialect you're speaking in when you're using the syllabics? How do you know which dialect you're using when you're speaking in the language? So there's the three that I know of, the Y, the L, and the N. So when you're using the syllabics and the syllabic keyboard, how do you know which dialect?
The sound.
But when you're, are the symbols the same regardless of the, are the syllabics the same regardless of the dialect?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The dialect. For instance, the N dialect, there's a lot of the N sound, ne, ni, no, na, right?
Yeah.
For the L dialect, it's le, li, lo, la.
Yeah.
So ne, ni, no, na becomes le, li, lo, la. So that's the difference. That's the main difference between. It's a substitute from one to the other.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm talking about, you know what?
Yeah, you just use a different key basically for the sound when you're spelling it. So you don't need a separate keyboard if you're speaking in a different dialect. It's all there. You just use a different key for the sound. Okay.
That's right.
That makes sense.
Like music.
Yeah. Sounds like music too.
From one key to another.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Gloria, I was wondering, with this research you've been doing, how do you see it progressing? What are your next steps?
Well, I'm working on those archival interventions. So sort of doing those overlays, really inspired by neon lights actually as well. And doing these overlays like on top of the missionary photographs and missionary documents to try to like unsettle those narratives. Because a lot of the times, like even translating those texts, they're really problematic. So that's sort of a new direction that I've been going. And then I've also just been working on journaling as a method to include in the academic writing as a way of like making a more accessible art history. And yeah, I'm also just interested in like Indigenous literacies, I guess, beyond like the alphanumeric. And so thinking about like birch bark biting and like other sort of like wampum and other sort of forms of literacy that that have been like neglected because of like Western biases. Yeah, I'm working on the book right now, so it's like I actually have a deadline coming up, so it's in production, I guess.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. And Megan, you're almost taking the syllabics and intersecting it with the oral tradition. And I think that's so brilliant that, I mean, our knowledge transference protocols were all based in an oral tradition. And so to be able to not just present the syllabics, but present them in such a way that it incorporates the oral tradition. How do you see that developing?
I mean, I actually see probably me starting the work and then just inviting others to join in and sort of let it go free, because I think that's the thing about what we see in other languages when they allow their fonts to talk. So like I think Arabic's a really good example, because they were forbidden from using images of people. They turned all their art to their language, and so you have some of the most breathtaking pieces, prayers drawn out in such a way that you just know they're a prayer by looking at them, because they're so beautiful. You know, things like inlaid it with like turquoise and gold. And so I kind of see any language can kind of go that way if you kind of turn it over to the people to play with. Like if we're always kind of just one person doing everything, it ends up, it gets really restricted, because I only am going to have so much of a, like, I only see the world so narrowly. Like I need to kind of let it go. So that's what I hope that like I can put this out. And mostly it came from my love of like different kinds of ways we use fonts to show things, like that idea of a horror movie, that like just how the font of like Death Day all bloody, like that just like immediately lets you know what's gonna happen. And I was like, I just want to see Cree syllabic that's all like, and you're like, I know what that is exactly. And I think we forget, and I think this comes a lot from sort of like the institutionalization of education, is we forget that writing is an art. Like all writing is an art. It's always been an art. And that we need to think of it like an art form, that it lives and breathes, and it wants to do weird things, because mostly kids want to do weird things with it. And I love the kind of stuff that kids come up with. And I'm really impressed with the kind of art of language that's coming out of, I think it's Alberta, with a lot of kids doing spray paint art, but they're doing it in language. And it's gorgeous. And they're taking all these principles of hip hop culture, but then they're pulling it into their own, and they're making it this like living, breathing art piece. And I mean, I've seen people do some really cool things with syllabic, like eating each other and kind of like, faces and monsters. And I was like, we don't get to see it on the big stage, because it's not easy to make a font. It's really hard. Like I myself found out how hard it was, and I had all the tools and I had access to everything I could have needed, and I can't do it. Like I'll maybe in like another year of practice I can do it. But you think of like a kid who just wanted to have some fun and then was like, well, I just want to do this quickly. That support is available for English and Latin and French. Like it's really easy to find a lot of software that'll just like, oh, do you want to make a really cool font? Just come into this free online software and you can do it, but it has to be English, or it has to be like Latin extended. And we don't have the keyboards set up on these online software for Cree. It's set up for almost everything else, but it's not set up for Cree. And it's having that keyboard set up is what eliminates a lot of those barriers. So really for me, it's just about like me diving in as an artist, because as an artist, I can get access to certain funds that'll let me play around with this, and then figuring out how do I eliminate those barriers, and then just share that and just like make that public. And then I can be like, go, be free.
That's fabulous. Well, I think we're out of time. But I was wondering if everybody, if there's something like a last word or something that you'd like to say to wind up the conversation, or something you want to take away with you. And I'm gonna start with Greg. What do you think, Greg?
I'm really listening to Gloria and Megan. I'm really grateful. Like I said at the start, what Gloria and Megan are doing, and they may be quite ahead of years younger than me, and that's what's really important. Like our young people looking at what's going on with the languages and researching and finding ways to find solutions and how we can make our children, our grandchildren, more receptible. That might be an understatement, because our grandchildren, our children, are probably more ahead of us in terms of us being receptive to the world, the language, the sounds, and all that, because our culture, not necessarily our culture, but our world, our education seem to compress them at a certain time of their lives, from when they become grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. There has to be some changes made to our education, to our people, our children, that they keep that imagination, that they keep that
Spark.
permeate, when they become absorbing other stuff, other worlds, other wrong knowledges. And I think that's really impressive to me, because the way Gloria talks and Megan, they're talking about language, they're talking about syllabics. How do we turn that to be artistic and to create anything on paper or whatever? And I'm really grateful for that. I'm inspired by that, because I've been working with that that's my life, and I've been doing it for years, and maybe from now on I'll keep doing it. And thanks, Gloria. Thanks to Megan. Thank you, and you keep doing it. Keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And thank you.
Thanks. Miigwech, Greg. And what do you think, Gloria? Any final words?
I just want to thank everyone. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Monique and Anis. And this was really inspiring for me as well to keep working on this. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing what Megan, what you're doing in the future, and Greg, keeping tabs on your work as well. I hope maybe we can collaborate or something in the future.
I was thinking that would be a great idea. Yeah.
I don't think we should stop here. I think we should keep doing it, because your work, both of you's work, we should find another forum or something. Once COVID disappears, we might be able to see each other face to face and say, "Okay, there you are." This is what you look like.
Yeah, we'll have to come up to his factory. It's been a while.
Come up to our festivals.
Yes, Cree-Fest, woo!
Okay. Come, Monique.
Yeah.
You know our festival.
Of course, yeah. Been to a few, Greg. They're great festivals, I can tell you. Music and food and people, culture. It's fantastic. It really is. Where is it going to be this year?
We don't know, because of the COVID. Our hosting community is supposed to be in Anishnabe, but because of COVID, they said no. We talked about the online stuff and stuff. They said no. We want
do that.
people in our community to come and celebrate with us. I said, okay. So maybe next August, it could happen there. It could happen there. I don't know. It depends on how long this COVID thing is happening.
Yeah. Well, with any luck, if not this year, then the next year. We'll be persistent.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Megan?
I just want to really thank Greg, because literally I would not be doing this work without all the work. Like, I'm literally standing on your shoulders and the mountain that you made, because like I would have had to also do this from scratch. And it also, it did give me an opportunity to be like, okay, there's formal systems in place. We can push this. Somebody's already done all this hard work. And I guess that's how it works, right? You do all this hard work, and then someone younger comes along and just pushes it a little bit further. And you're like, wait, I don't know if I approve. So yeah, I feel like that's just like the Cree child experience. Just be like, I don't know if I approve of that. I'm doing it anyways.
You've been to Moose Factory.
My family's from Moose Factory.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
maybe we're related. My son's alluded.
We are. Yeah, I said I am related to your son. Remember, because of Sutherland's. Because I'm related to the Sutherlands.
That's right. That's on his Googum side.
Yeah.
That's right. About that. That's right.
Yeah,
you can't go far.
Sutherland's, the Vincents, the Rentons, the Nicholsons. Oh man, I can't remember everyone. The Pewters. I'm related to all that.
Oh yeah, Greg can hear. Yeah.
Is he laughing?
Yeah.
Number one in my family.
Wait, is that everybody? Are we related? We're not related.
Wait, what about the Morrisons?
Oh, the Morrisons. Beulah. I love Beulah. She was a lovely, lovely lady.
I am definitely not related to the
Because some of my family, my mom's side is related to the Morrisons up there.
Oh yeah, that's Moose Factory. Moose Factory.
Yeah. Yeah.
How am I not related to the Morrisons then? Probably not.
Well, we got to keep some genes separate.
I know, right? Well, definitely there was the whole like, where's your? Well, my dad's from Newfoundland, and when my mom's Métis, and when she went to Newfoundland, my dad's mom did the whole like, what's your mom's last name? What's your mom's maiden last name? What's your dad's last name? What's your mom's maiden last name? And then she was like, all right, you're definitely not related at least 5 generations. You're fine.
So we're safe.
We're safe.
I had a horrible moment with my son's dad when we thought for a minute that there might be a because he's Moose Factory and I'm Rapid Lake, and it's next door, like the Cree are neighbors, see?
Yeah.
So it was, for a minute it was like, what? What was that? Nothing at all. Okay.
No, fine, it's fine.
Let's just move on, shall we? It's all fine, it's all good. My son so far is very good. That's good.
It's terrible.
And on that note, la la la.
Well, there was a comment about.
Oh, really?
Yes. So Patricia and Carmel said, "Thank you to all. So interesting and timely. The semiotics of font is something I've never thought of before, but look forward to seeing more of this development. The extreme cost is such a factor of syllabic fonts. I mean, LOL."
So expensive. Just all fonts. If you're paying somebody, if you do it yourself, it's nothing. It's just the time.
Exactly. And
I mean, if I could find somebody who specializes in fonts, I probably would just rather work with them. Like Canada Type is amazing. They've been really sweet, but they're still a professional design company, so they still have to think about all their overhead. So if I was working with and I would actually love to work with an artist who was also Indigenous, and ideally Cree or Métis would be amazing. But I'd have to get the font, I'd have to get the funds first, and so I'm still at the point of asking a lot of the galleries, but because of COVID, everyone's like, talk to us in 2021, and then most of them are saying if anything does happen, it wouldn't be until 2022. And then also Canada Council has changed their funding cycle application. So you actually have to apply I think almost like the year prior to when you plan on doing things, but you have to have everyone locked down. Like, that's crazy. Like, how are you going to
So you have to have
everyone...
like letters of interest or something, right?
Yeah, I need letters of interest. I need a gallery who says, yes, for sure, we'll show it. Or I have to have a couple of galleries if we're going to do it as a tour. I do have Canada Type on board, but like they're also like totally understandable. Like they understand if I just want to go with a single artist because it might actually be cheaper. And also I would be able to learn that. So that was the other thing too, is if I do take them on, they were going to teach me. So it wasn't like I was just handing over my work. They were actually going to teach me the process of like how to develop fonts, because for me, it's very important as a game designer that I at least understand all the processes. So like I learned how to program, even though I'm absolutely awful at it. Because for me, I was seeing a lot of Indigenous groups and communities just wholesale passing off everything to these tech companies. And then lots of like really hurt feelings, lots of stuff being like, from the community standpoint, stolen, but from the standpoint of the tech company, they thought, and legally they had rights to the things that they made because those things weren't discussed. And I just think when you don't know everything, you don't have to do everything, but if you don't know what you're kind of giving up and you don't know how to talk to them about what you're giving up and make sure that you understand what they're doing, like you lose a lot in translation. So that's my big thing, is like helping people learn how to program so that helping Indigenous youth learn how to program and make games so they can do stuff. I'm talking a lot, I'm sorry.
That's great.
So lonely. It's like
COVID is like, oh my God.
I want to see that photograph.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I just found out because I was like, wait, why would he go? He went. Okay, so my aunt's like, he went in 1886, he went to England to see his Cree translation of the Pilgrim's Progress. So that's why he's all dressed up, because he was going to see the showing of his translation, which I guess his name wasn't on it now if there's no documents. That's so crazy, because like I thought, because yeah, for years my grandma and my aunt were telling me this story, but I couldn't find anything that backed it up. And so, because everything was Horton. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, I don't like, stories get lost, maybe they lied, that kind of thing. But like, now that you're saying that, and I actually did assume that Horton was also Indigenous, because a lot of people were holding him up as like, oh, he made the first translation. I was like, that seems really weird. And from everything I've learned about him since, everything I learned about him, I didn't know his name. I just knew the letters my ancestor wrote to him and about him. And he was just like, he just didn't like the guy. He just seemed really small-minded. He didn't think that anybody with any native blood could be capable of running anything, even though Vincent was basically running the entire moose factory, I guess the congregation, and the area around. He was running all of it by himself. But this dude kept bringing in people from like from England. And it was like, what? And there's like letters, or like not letters, I guess reports from, what did you say the group was? It was like
the Church Missionary Society.
Yeah, there was letters from them to Horton that I'd seen being like, why don't you just, like, you should just let Vincent be in charge. And then Horton just basically being like, no, like he's just not educated enough. And it would have been fine if he hadn't married a Métis woman. Like then we could have like maybe at least put his kids in through it, because they wouldn't have been so native. And it's like, it's pretty bad.
That's really interesting. I haven't heard of that story. Like I haven't heard of that history, but that's like a really important chapter, I think, to tell.
That's so cool. Yeah, we can chat like later. Sorry, I realize this is like an actual public talk and not just tea time with friends. Thank you for putting up with my rambling.
Thank you, Monique, and thank you, Anise.
And thank you so much.
This was great.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for coming out tonight. We really appreciate everyone who came out. Edgar, nice to see you again. And Patricia and Carm, that's great. And I think I even saw Neil there for a minute, but he looks like he's gone now. So, and we do this every third Tuesday of the month. And I think the next one's going to be in January. And then we're going to start doing a call for people to participate in these. So, and thank you, Sam. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. I'm going to close the space. Kachimigwich, Jemnado, thank you for these wonderful conversations and for the information sharing and the story and the family sharing and the building of relationship. And we look forward to more work together and help us to build a community from these discussions and to continue to benefit the artists and the youth of not just our families, but all of our extended, all of our relations. Kachimigwich, 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 Kachimigwich. Thank you. And thanks to you guys. This has been totally amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
We appreciate it. Thanks. Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Hello.
Hello. Oh, hello.
There you are.
Yes, Greg. Too. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. I was wondering about sharing emails and stuff, but I didn't want to say anything just in case.